I think I was just really fatigued from dealing with corporate culture. I feel like I'm never good at adjusting myself based on other people's standard. When Anyi was like, oh, like I kind of want to do a business or start freelancing, it was kind of like a perfect way for me to be like, okay, let's try again. I think the first year we really just didn't make that much. If we couldn't grow a lot, then I guess it may be worth seeing what else is there. We might have to use some of our savings to like get us by as we build this thing. You don't make a lot of money when you first start your business, and you work a lot harder than you do in a corporate job.
If you were to kind of look ahead to maybe 3 to 5 years, what are some things you hope happen for your company?
I hope that in 3 to 5 years, we figure out what that means.
Hello, this is the Little Pursuits podcast where we have conversations with founders, leaders, and builders creating something they believe in. I'm your host, Dar Patel, an executive coach for founders and leaders. Today, I'm joined by Andrea Nguyen and Anyi Sun, co-founders of Koi Studios, a human-centered design studio built on a simple belief: design can be a force for good. They work with organizations to bridge visionary creativity with real-world impact, turning big ideas into products and programs people genuinely need and love. Let's get into it. Hey, Anyi. Hey, Andrea. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining me today. So to start off our episode, I wanted to kind of take us back. So we're going to kind of connect the dots as we speak about your story. And I wanted to go back to, when you were younger, like what were your interests? What like sparked you?
How young?
I mean, you can go back to when you were a kid, because, some people like they just know like, oh, this is what I want to do. Right. Or like high school age, like just kind of like what were your interests during that time period?
Yeah, I think I struggled pretty much all the way until like my junior year of college in trying to figure out what I wanted to do. When I was a kid, I remember seeing like books that like you write in kindergarten, and it said that I wanted to be a lawyer, which is like very much a product of my parents. But when I went into college, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer. I tried to do like business. I tried to do marketing. And it took me a really long time to kind of figure out where I was going to go. Yeah, same for me. I think I've had interests, but I didn't know how they translate into careers. In school, I really enjoyed history as a subject. I also like reading business magazines that my parents subscribed to. That was when I was in high school. And then in college, I took psychology class and I really liked it. And I decided to major in psychology, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do with the degree. I think it was like really after a few years of internships and actually working as a professional to then I think figure out, okay, maybe this is what I want to do in my life.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I also got a bachelor's in psychology, and then I wasn't sure what PhD focus I wanted to have. And so I was like, you know what, let me just go work and try and figure out like if that's a better angle for me. So I can definitely relate to that. And so as you're kind of finishing college, you're doing some of these internships. Are you thinking of like, okay, this is a kind of career I want? You kind of have it a little bit more nailed down. What were you interested in doing after you graduated?
My first job after graduation, well, it was still an internship. It was in like an HR intern. And I did not enjoy that. I found it pretty boring to me.
Yeah.
And then I always studied organizational psychology for master's. And a lot of my peers at that time, they became a human resources consultant or talent management consultant. And I tried that and I didn't like it. And then I thought, okay, maybe it is marrying psychology with business or marketing. So I worked at a market research firm where I was hired as a researcher. Then my role became a product manager. And then I worked with a product designer at that company. And then I think something clicked at that time. And I realized, wait, that's something I wanted to do. I really actually also enjoyed using Photoshop when I was in high school. So that was the moment I felt like I found the career that I that I was looking for.
Amazing. And how did you pivot from all these different roles? Like, because I think that's one of the things like people really struggle to figure out, like, okay, maybe I want to try that, but I don't know how to get into that, right? So what were some things that helped you to pivot from, you know, a very different role to like the roles that you were interested in?
I think tactically, I just started doing it. Like as to pivot into a design career, for example, I went to a part-time boot camp and then I just started building my portfolio by working on fake products, like asking my friends if they had any ideas and I would just work on these ideas. I think there was more of a deeper psychological layer as well. I think I felt absurd for me at that time to feel like I was a designer because growing up, my parents taught accounting. Even in HR internships, I was using Excel a lot. I was good at statistics. I just thought like I was never the creative type and calling myself designer was crazy. I think there was this like mental psychological flip or switch I needed to do for myself in order to even just embrace that identity. And once I was able to embrace it, I feel I was able to talk about design more confidently when I was looking for a job.
Yeah, I think that's such a valid point because when you pivot into something you're unfamiliar with or you feel like, you know, I don't have this experience, it's also hard to kind of convey like, actually, I am good at this, right? And accept that this is my new kind of role and identity. Were there things you did that helped you to accept that role a little bit more? Like what were some things that helped you to create this new identity for yourself?
I remember I was listening to a podcast by the author of Eat, Pray, Love. If you remember her name, please remind me because now like I'm blanking out.
I'm also blanking on the author, but I definitely know what you're talking about.
The podcast was about pursuing creative professions. And she talked about how you need to write a certificate or a permission letter for yourself to say, I can become this person. I can do this thing. I didn't actually write it down, but I wrote it down in my mind mentally. I did. And I really remember that moment. Like I was cooking, I was like chopping vegetable. And then like I was thinking about that inside my mind. Amazing. And that was really helpful.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that is super helpful. And I think I'm gonna try that exercise at some point about things where I may feel like, you know, I don't know, this feels a little outside of my zone. Like podcast host, you know. So Andrea, what about you? So after college, you know, what were some of those initial steps you took and what were you interested in accomplishing during that time?
Yeah, so my career transition actually happened when I was still in college. So I studied economics and math, and then I was interning in marketing and business development for a startup out of UCLA. And I remember doing the internship, and there was like one task that I was doing where I was really just not good at it. I was like, and then I started to kind of panic because I was like, oh my God, like this is a thing that I thought that I really wanted to do and I'm not good at it and I don't like it. And why I didn't like it was because I didn't feel like there was enough creativity and artistry involved. So I did always think of myself as kind of the creative person. And when I was like growing up, I did a lot of like painting and drawing and that type of stuff. I knew I didn't want to be like a pure artist as a career, but I wanted to do something a little bit creative. So I was talking to a friend and she had mentioned that her other friend was doing something called UX design. And I always thought that I didn't really know what it was. I thought it was like you had to learn how to code and like it was kind of like software development. But then she told me that you didn't need to know how to code. And I was like, oh my God, this might be it. So I went to this like student-led design conference. I met a recruiter there and I put together like a portfolio of fake projects in like a few days. I like skipped all my classes to do it. I sent it to him and then I heard nothing back. And then for that startup, I was lucky enough that that startup that I was interning for at the time let me switch over to do UX design for them. And then towards the end of the summer, like a week before this new internship was scheduled to start, a different recruiter from that company reached out to me. I was like, hey, are you still looking for an internship? And it was because whoever they hired couldn't do it anymore. So it was a kind of string of like lucky events that I kind of fell into that. But I learned a lot from that internship. And then ever since then, this was probably towards the end of my junior year, starting senior year. That's when I started to design.
Okay, amazing. And sometimes I think you just need that click, like you mentioned, right? Like that moment where you're like, oh my God, this is what I've been kind of searching for, right? And so in this internship, what were some of the takeaways that then, you kind of maybe use to get onto your next role after graduating?
Yeah, it taught me a lot about it taught me almost everything I knew about design at that moment. It was a bigger company, so there were a lot of senior designers and like a bigger design team for me to get mentorship from, to learn from. So I learned a lot of the fundamentals of design. I learned about how to use design systems and that type of stuff. But I also just learned about like how to work within a bigger corporate culture. At that time, we were still in office. So I was like working with them directly, seeing people in person and all of that type of stuff. And then I graduated into the pandemic. And so after that, since then I've been remote. And then I was taking some of the contract roles right out of college because it was really hard to find like a full-time role during COVID. So in that, I just took a lot of the learnings from about how to design fundamentally, as well as just like how to work with other people, how to work with cross-functional stakeholders and that type of stuff. Things that I wouldn't have really learned in the startup because it was so much smaller.
Right. No, I think sometimes that is a piece you also have to pick up the skills, right? Like, how do I help people understand the importance of design if that's not like their main focus, and convince them that, hey, this is important and we do need to spend time thinking about this, right? And so once you're, doing these contracting roles, like what are you learning during that process?
Yeah. So during that time, I would say I learned different things from working with startup versus working like a bigger company versus like contracting, freelancing. In a startup, you're like much scrappier. So you're wearing a lot of different hats. You're doing a lot more than design. And so you're learning like the business side of things and like how to build like really products from nothing, but then like really fast. And then with like the in-house at a larger company, you're learning about the mechanics of business, how design processes, operations, and like how to grow a team, how to work with other designers, how to work with other stakeholders. And then with freelancing and contracting, you're learning about how to work with clients directly. So not just like things like contracting and invoicing and all of that type of stuff that you wouldn't do in-house, but you're also learning like what it means to give your expertise and compromise with your client while still doing work that they are asking for or wanting, learning how to like scope projects according to what their budget looks like, and all of these other kind of like adjacent skills to design that if you were, again, in-house, you probably wouldn't really need to know.
Right. Right. No, I think that is a whole nother set of skills, right? One, to just even find the clients that you want to offer your services to. And then once you do kind of get that interest, it's like, how do you convert? And then, and we'll talk about that with your design studio, right? No, I think all those different avenues. So it sounds like you have like startup experience, corporate, and then also like kind of starting your business type of stuff, right? So freelance, but really developing like how do you grow that business side of things. Okay, so once you've done that, how did you guys meet and connect? What is that story?
I will talk about my version, and then Andrea, feel free to chime in or change any details, correct my memories. So we were working together previously in-house at the same company, and we also worked on the same project together. We don't sit in technically the same product teams, but our design team was so small. So like we basically work with each other. One time we were asked to go to a conference in San Francisco together, and at the conference, we went to the programming, and then in the evening we had dinner together. It was at a Korean restaurant. I remember that very clearly. We ordered a deconstructed ramen, and then as we were eating the deconstructed ramen, we were talking about just our aspirations, and I talked about how I wanted to start my own business, and then Andrea was like, you know what, me too. And at that moment, we were just like, well, should we do this together then? Why not? And it's almost like that was the courage we needed to actually just start it just over dinner. And then after that, we went back to work. We just started doing smaller tasks one by one. So I will be like, hey, I did this thing just so we can get started. And then Andrea will be doing another thing like, oh, hey, I filed this form to the government. And then when slowly it just became serious. And then I quit my job. I was going to quit either way, but I quit my job and I had more time to work on it. And we started getting clients. And that was the moment where we felt like, okay, this is actually going to become something.
Amazing. So one question I was thinking of as you were speaking was, like, where did that desire come from to like start your own company for both of you, right? What does that mean for you to kind of have your own company?
For me, I feel like I never fit in a mold of what a corporate person should feel or think. I wouldn't go through performance review and think, why am I doing this? Why am I feel like I'm never good at adjusting myself based on other people's standard. It is pretty hard for me to do that. And I just didn't want to be subject to that.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, I think I was similar. I think I was just really fatigued from dealing with corporate culture. I feel like one of those people who just like cares a lot about stuff and like wants to do more, but that isn't always rewarded when you're working in corporate culture. And you have to deal with a lot of external factors. And so for me, it was kind of just, I've always had an interest in entrepreneurship. I worked, interned at the startups and stuff. I did actually try to start the design studio by myself a few years back and failed miserably. And so when Anyi was like, oh, like I kind of want to do a business or start freelancing, it was kind of like a perfect way for me to be like, okay, let's try again and see how it goes this time.
Yeah. No, I think that moment of where you're like, you know what, I want to start my own thing. It's such a critical point, right? So the fact that you both, I think, kind of felt the frustration of the corporate structure. I think performance reviews are, it's a process, and works for some people, and I think for some people it's probably like, a little bit more challenging because, you have to constantly make sure you kind of put everything you've ever done front and center, visible. It's a whole game, right? To make sure that your work is kind of being communicated to the right people. And also maybe the desire to like move up in the corporate culture, right? Like some people really just have that. And for some people, it's like, that's not really like fulfilling to me. So, having started your company, what were like some of the first challenges that you guys encountered when you first started?
Yeah. The obvious one, I think, is getting clients. That's like always the first question that people ask us is like, oh, like, how did you get clients? We had to be really scrappy. Word of mouth is like always going to be the biggest like lead generator, but it's also unpredictable because you don't know when someone's going to need work or someone you know is going to need work. But when you start, you do have to like kind of put your ego aside and reach out to literally everybody you know. You never know where that project is going to come from. And the other thing that we would do is just start looking for people who were posting for contract design work, not necessarily like a design agency, but anyone who is hiring for freelance or contract work, and just reaching out to them with our own portfolios and things like that. The other thing I would say is just like financially adjusting. You don't make a lot of money when you first start your business, and you work a lot harder than you do in a corporate job. And there are a lot of adjustments you have to make. You don't contribute as much to your 401k. You have to pay for your own health insurance. If you don't have a spouse, you pay a lot more in taxes. So that was a really hard adjustment, and just feeling like we were doing the right thing by starting a business, even though the financials made it hard. And someone told us you kind of have to shift your mindset from like the traditional sense of saving and just think about it as like an investment into yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably what stops a lot of people from starting, right? As the kind of financial step back that you have to take. You know, thinking of that, was there a certain time frame you're like, okay, if we haven't hit these goals by this time, we're done? Or was it just like, let's just see how this evolves? What was like kind of your mindset around that?
I think it's a mix of both. We did have revenue goals mapped out, but we also didn't know how feasible it was to hit these revenue goals. So it was almost like, let's see what happens. Also, I think personally, for me, it's to see like the percentage growth, like year over year, are we growing? And also, I think the first year we really just didn't make that much. Like it was okay, but it wasn't a lot. So I kind of figured, well, if we couldn't grow a lot, then I guess it may be worth seeing what else is there.
Yeah. I also think we probably knew that we wouldn't, make as much as we did before, especially in the first year. And we didn't necessarily have like a number that was like, okay, if we don't hit this, we're done. I think we looked at it more in terms of, okay, we might have to use some of our savings to like get us by as we build this thing. If we're using too much of our savings, that might be a problem, Yeah. So we're thinking more about like, let's just make sure we're not losing too much money personally, and then give us some time to build from there and like build up our cash flow. I will say we never spent any of our like own money to invest into the business really. And so that was a good starting point too. We started from zero and not negative. And so as long as we weren't dipping too much into our personal savings to where it felt dangerous, we're like, okay, let's just see how it goes.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. How long did it take you to get your first client? So like from the point you started your business to like, okay, we've landed our first client.
I believe it was like a few weeks or so.
Oh, yeah, wow, nice.
It was pretty quick. Surprisingly, we knew it didn't take too long, but the other day we were just looking at that and realized, oh, it was just like 2-3 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you said it came from your network, or was this like where you submitted your portfolio? And what was that process like?
So our very first client was actually somebody completely random. We had seen them posting about, we actually saw their investor posting about their company needing design support. And we just commented on that post and DM'd them. And they DM'd us back. And then we put together a website in like 2 days to send over to them. And that was pretty much, we got pretty lucky with that one. Our second client, though, was from our network. Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like, you're keeping your options open, like looking and making sure you're staying active, and contacting people when you see that they're like, hey, we have this need, right? And so do you guys now have like a salesperson who does this, or, someone who's kind of bringing in the leads? How has that process evolved from your network to expanding outside of that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we realized that we couldn't always rely on our network being there at the right time. We are still our own salesperson right now. We've tried different things when it comes to outreach and marketing. So last year, we hired an outreach firm to help us just cold message people.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't see a lot of success in that. I think it really is a quantities game. Like you have to reach out to so many people to find the right person.
Yeah.
So this year, our focus has really shifted to inbound marketing. So getting leads from higher funnel. So just to get people to be aware of us, and then nurture the relationship through high quality content, such as blog posts, newsletters, LinkedIn posts. And then at the right time, we're hoping that they will think of us.
Yeah.
So it is a longer term strategy, but we've already seen more success in that. And we don't really like spamming people's inbox. So the outbound was just not for us.
Yeah, no, I think now you do kind of need content, right? This is just, I don't know, I see that shift for everybody, right? Because even if you have like ads running and things like that, like I think people want to kind of see your brand and like, what are you about? What kinds of things do you write about or care about or talk about? And I don't know, there's this like connection that has to kind of happen at some point. So, that strategy, I think I see it with like all companies having to do it, like all the founders having to kind of have their own brand and, some kind of presence. And so did you guys also kind of think about that for yourselves of like, okay, we also need to kind of build a brand as like the leaders of our company?
Yeah, for sure.
A long time, I think we were posting from our Koi Studios company account, and it was fine, but we realized somebody had told us, like, if you look at your LinkedIn feed, it's pushing very little content to you from companies, and it's mostly from individuals. And that's when we had to shift to posting on our personal LinkedIns instead of the company one, which we were very reluctant to do at first because we just felt like posting on LinkedIn was so cringy.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, I think you just have to get over it, and you can do it in a way that's like kind of authentic to you, and you don't have to put like, clickbaity stuff and things that like you don't think add value. But just posting on LinkedIn keeps you, I mean, retrospectively, even if you think about how we got our second client, who was from our network, the only reason that she thought of us was because we were posting on LinkedIn, or she saw a comment about us looking for contract work. So if you're not staying like top of mind for people and you're not in front of them and on their screen, they're not going to remember you when even if they did have work for you to do.
Right. Absolutely. I know that's a big like transition if you like not posted on LinkedIn or anywhere really. And now it's like, okay, now I think I need to post.
Yeah.
It's a scary thought, right? To kind of put it all out there. So was there anything that helped you initially to like get started? What were like some of the, I think in, branding, we call them content pillars, right? What were some of the things that you're like, you know what, I feel comfortable talking about these things or like posting about these things?
Yeah, we did. We have a Notion board for content brainstorming, and we basically sat down and thought about who our target audiences are and what kind of content they would care about. I would say it was more of a experiment too, because it's hard to tell. Like we had our best guesses, but we were not always right. So we would try with different types of content. So there will be content about how to design for a certain thing. There will be content about user research and also about just product design, working with product designers, working in product teams in general. So really like all aspects of being a product designer or learning how to be a good product designer. That being said, we are also thinking to start TikTok videos about just like lives as entrepreneurs or as business owners, and which is like completely different topic. But every time we go to events, people would ask us questions like, how did you get started? How do you get your customers? And we thought it would just be fun for us to start a series.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that like this is such a big topic, right? Like, because people are interested in kind of doing their own thing, but they're just kind of like, well, I don't know where to start. I don't know what to look for, right? Like, how do I just kind of get to that first customer or client, right? So it's really helpful to hear how other people have approached it. And if it resonates, you can be like, let me try that. That person said it worked for them. Maybe it'll also work for me, you know?
Yeah.
So I think people are very interested in that. And how do you feel about like starting the TikTok or, you know, kind of putting now also a video and voice kind of out there, right? It's one thing to kind of put a LinkedIn post and then it's because I feel it like it's like a jump, right? To kind of put out some kind of video format on the internet.
It's hard. It's going to take some time for us to get used to just hearing our own voice and finding a voice that's like natural to us, making sure that like our content is scripted so that it has value and we're not rambling, but at the same time, making that feel like genuine, authentic to our personalities. But I don't know. It sounds like it could be some fun.
Yeah. No, I love that. Is there like a mindset that helps you to just get into it when you're in front of the camera? I'm not sure if you've already recorded some things, but because I think that's the hardest part, right? Like it's just you and this camera, right? It's one thing to like talk to someone, but like it's like, oh, it's just me and this camera.
Yeah.
So it's like, is there anything that's like helped you in that process of recording?
We haven't filmed too much content so far, but we did just film some this morning, and it was a video with both Anyi and I. And I think one thing that helped was actually just having us there, having the conversation and filming the conversation from beginning to end so that we can cut when we're doing the editing, but in the moment, it feels a little bit more natural. Like I'm just having a conversation with Anyi.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to use that strategy as I start to plan my other content as well. I also am curious to see if multitasking will help me, like going on a walk and doing it or something to where you're not so focused on just you talking to this camera.
Yeah, I see a lot of formats where people are like cooking or cleaning and they're like talking about something completely different from like what they're doing. Yeah. Okay, so that's like the inbound and content strategy. How do you also talk about what you offer, right? Like what are some things you're helping to solve for the clients that you work for?
We tailor the message to depending on the type of clients. So when we talk to startup clients, it's a lot of designing a product from scratch or helping them find product market fit or helping them secure the next round of funding. So in our pitch, we will talk a lot about how we are their design partner, helping them realize their product vision and how we can move fast with them and be adaptable in pivoting. When it comes to bigger, more established companies, we focus on talking about how we are a part of their team because we both came from an in-house background. We firsthand how to work with product managers, engineers, how to navigate the politics with stakeholders. So we really want to focus on that when we pitch them and talk about how fast we can onboard, because we've worked with so many product teams on so many products before. So we understand a lot of different areas and industries. Andrea, did I miss anything?
No, I think that rounds it out. I also think we just think a lot about how we're different. We're constantly trying to figure out how to message that. We're very aware that agencies and design studios are a very saturated market. And so the differentiation part is really important. But I think it's not just in what you say, but how you shape your operation. So our biggest differentiator, we like to think, is that we have worked in-house before. We have worked with agencies where companies spend hundreds of thousands of dollars working with these agencies, and they don't get a lot of usable or useful work out of it. And that's because a lot of agencies, especially in the traditional sense, the way they price projects is a very fixed thing. The way they scope projects is a very fixed thing. And the amounts of revisions that you get and the timelines and everything are very rigid. So for us, we try to shape our services a little bit differently. We bill hourly instead of fixed so that we can flex depending on the needs. We don't write statements of work with really defined scopes at the beginning, because we know that scope changes all the time. So all that to say, we talk about it, but then it also kind of has to show in how you shape your business. And people have to really feel that you are actually different when they talk to you and see how you work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think all of these things, right, they also take time to evolve. So probably when you first started your company, it was kind of hard to nail down, okay, what is our differentiator, right? And then you kind of work with a few clients, and then eventually that kind of evolves. And it's oh, I see we do this really well. So let's kind of double down on that, and we can kind of create that differentiator, right? So, because I think that's the hardest part. Like you mentioned, there's so many different agencies, but it's how do you kind of stand apart from that? Yeah,
Exactly.
So the other part I wanted to talk about was working together, right? Because I'm sure you guys spend a lot of time together. So I wanted to understand, what helps you to work together in the best way? What are some things that has helped you to kind of be a really great team together?
I think interestingly, we've always worked remotely with each other, even in the previous job too. So that kind of helps. Just that's always been what we've been doing. We do see each other at least once a year. So either I will fly to California, San Francisco, or Andrea will come to New York. Recently, it's been Andrea coming to New York, but it's always fun. We try to do things outside of work. We would do photo shoots. We will go do a spa day, go to different restaurants. So it's a lot of bonding activities outside of work. We also do this thing at the end of every quarter. We call it quarterly wrapped, where it's just the two of us. We do more in-depth conversation reflecting the quarter, not only how business is going, but more so how we what emotions that we feel during the quarter. What are some things that we want to change? Does working on this business still align with our personal goals? What are some of the things we want to do more of, less of? And I think I always really enjoy doing those exercises because it helped me reflect on my experience, but it also is a very structured way of sharing our thoughts and emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. I do some of these exercises with my own clients too, because I think when you're executing, you're just kind of going from one thing to the next, right? So we're not kind of pausing to think about okay, how is it actually going, right? Is this still aligned? What are our goals that felt okay, this was a flow. We got to these pretty well. What were some challenges that it's just like no matter what we did, it's just kind of stuck. We're stuck in this kind of way. How can we try something new and different, right? So almost sounds like a retreat or like a, offsite, as corporate speak says, right? Like having kind of like an offsite. It's like, let's go somewhere away from our normal environments and just reflect and think about what's next for us. So I absolutely love that. And how do you give each other feedback, right? Especially when it could be hard feedback to give. Are there certain things that work for you guys to say, this format of communication really works when giving feedback to each other?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I feel like that may be something we should add to our quarterly wrapped. I think with project work, it's easier because it's like, oh, like this design doesn't work because this and that. But with just maybe other things we haven't figured out, like, or don't have a good way structured to do that yet. And maybe that's something that we can incorporate.
So far, we've been really lucky to not have too many difficult conversations with each other. I also think we're both like very empathetic, but also understand each other and have similar work styles. So it kind of helps that like I don't ever feel like Anyu's not doing something right or that she's doing something totally different than what I would do and that we didn't talk to each other about things first. Like we're very open in that type of communication so that down the line we don't have these like big conflicts and issues. I think we've also built up a lot of trust now. And, we've been working together on this for 2.5 years, but before that, in corporate for a while as well. And even in that environment, we worked very well together. So maybe that's more of a lesson of like choosing your co-founder carefully and making sure that you guys have complementary strengths and interests, but similar working styles and can collaborate well.
No, it's such a good call out. I think this is some of the things that I talk to founders about a lot, especially like super early stage founders who are looking for co-founders. And they're like, how do I go about doing it? It's, it feels similar to dating in a sense, because you're trying to find that person that you can like build with. And it's very different, right? Because you're kind of putting everything else on hold and saying, okay, let's go make this kind of like successful. And a lot of emotions can come up during that time, especially when things are not going according to plan, right? That's kind of when things show up much more. So that's great that you guys have such a great, strong foundation that you've built on top of. And so I guess a related question could be, I'm sure working with so many different clients, these kinds of things can come up where some projects are not on track or there's some disagreements that can happen. How do you guys handle that too, right? Communicating with the client and kind of helping to get to a resolution. Do you guys have some kind of strategy, or is there one of you that kind of handles that role?
It's a very rare situation in which we would need to like actually break up with a client, in which we would kind of chat with each other and like talk about how to go about it in a way that isn't burning bridges. Yeah. And then we would end up like, sending the client a message, offering to have like a chat to make sure that we're not leaving them high and dry. Yeah. In smaller conflicts or like disagreements around, design feedback or product feedback or anything that's like in the day-to-day work, I think it's taken care of in terms of the relationship and the trust that we build with our clients. Again, we do our agency a little differently in that we try to really embed into their team so that it's like we're working together as coworkers full time towards like a common goal. It's not that like you're one team, I'm one team, and you're contracting me to work. And in that way, we're able to have a lot more like honest conversations about product and feedback. And it's a little bit more like a open discussion than it is like they're telling us what to do. We don't want to do it, like that type of situation where contracting or traditional agency work might look like.
That makes sense. I think every project we have such optimism of like, we're going to hit these deadlines and this budget, and it hardly kind of happens, right? That we hit everything. So I'm sure like smaller things come up, and you have to kind of help navigate that conversation. And over time, I'm sure you've figured out like, okay, this kind of works a little bit better than if we kind of present it this way. So part of it is just going through it, right? When you get to the other side, you kind of look back and go, okay, that worked.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is just like proactive communication and transparency and communicating early. Like if you think you're going to miss a deadline, you'll probably know that a few weeks before the day of. Like you don't want to get to the day of and be like, hey, like actually we can't deliver this today. Like you want to make sure that you're communicating that early on and explaining kind of why those things are. And if your communication with your client has been open and transparent, then they would have already had ideas of some of the roadblocks coming up. Right. And it wouldn't feel like kind of like a blind side or it's kind of all on you for not meeting that deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. And often like in these situations, there's a lot of dependencies too, right? So it's not just you alone kind of missing something or like your team. It's often a lot of other stuff is also happening that's kind of slowing something down. So we talked about client relationship. The other question I had is, do you guys have advisors or, people that you kind of talk to as you're building and growing your company that has like really helped you? And what are some of the feedback or advice that they've given you that has really helped you to get to where you are and where you are headed?
Andrea, do you want to start? Ask me.
Yeah, sure. So I think we've met a couple of people along the way, especially in areas where we don't have a lot of expertise. We've tried to have conversations with people who do. For example, when we started inbound marketing, neither of us have any background in marketing at all, except for my internship when I was like 18 years old or whatever. So we talked to Agnes, who's my sister-in-law, who has been in marketing for a really long time. And she gave us really good advice about how to kind of set up our marketing funnel, the different types of content that we should have. And we kind of check in with her to just like share how we've been doing, see if she's had any advice. We've also met other people who have started freelancing or done freelancing and agencies for a really long time and kind of picked their brain about it. Scott at Forge has also been another really great resource for us. So thank you for that. But yeah, just kind of talking to people who have already done it, hearing about their experiences, validating whether like we're on the right track or if they've done something similar is really helpful. We've found it in our journey very hard to know, like if we're doing the right thing or if we're, growing fast enough or if this is the right stuff that we should spending our time on or like how often we should hire, just all of these questions. And there's not a lot of resources out there for you to like learn about this stuff, which is also why we kind of wanted to start our TikTok. But I find that the one-on-one connections that you build with people are most valuable just because to give and get like really valuable advice, I feel like you have to know the business really well, know the person really well, and understand what they want and what their goals are. So yeah, I find kind of that like one-on-one mentorship connection to be really valuable, but hard to find.
Yeah, absolutely. And it takes time to build, right? Like you have to kind of, I don't know, the mentor relationship is a progress, right? It's like you meet someone, you just kind of hit it off and connect and evolves into this like mentoring relationship. As opposed to just going to a marketplace and someone just like mentors you. I think that also feels very different.
Transactional.
Yeah. And they're also not as invested in you, right? So it's a different kind of relationship. And for each of you, is there a resource, or this can be like a book, podcast, community, coaching, whatever, right? Like anything that's like really helped you as you've grown and built this company, right? I know we talked about the mentor piece, but anything else that's just like when you're like not sure, like should I be investing my time on this or my resources in this? Just anything that's kind of helped you with those types of decisions as well.
I think we talking to each other has always been helpful and useful in just like talking things out, even just as a way to sort through different ideas and thoughts in our mind. I also found that interestingly, sometimes when I talk to our clients and learn about their business models, it gives me ideas on what we should do with our own business too. And I always found that very fun and enlightening when I talk to them. I think thirdly, it's more on emotional support. It's just talking with my husband, sometimes my parents, just for emotional support have been really, really helpful. Just venting to them sometimes.
Yeah, I get it.
We've also been using ChatGPT a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're not using it, you're also kind of maybe missing out a little bit, right? So it's like, where do you find the balance between using that resource and kind of saying, okay, let us kind of think through this ourselves. Like, what do we want that to look like? Or what do we think, would be the right decision here? So that kind of balance, I'm sure is everyone's looking for it. It's like, where is that balance?
I thought that like I feel like talking to each other does help a lot, because it's like when you're just thinking of an idea by yourself, you just don't have like a sounding board or somebody to think through different perspective for you. And I feel like sometimes when you talk to other people, they might just not understand like what you're looking for and who you are. For example, when we first started, like we talked to a lot of people who started agencies or freelancing, and a lot of them were like, oh, like we don't do marketing, or the goal is to not have to go look for your own clients and like they'll come to you, but we don't do any external marketing, or we don't do events, like all of these types of things. But for us, we actually feel like marketing has helped us a lot and is a really great way for us to invest our time. And that's kind of specific to not just our business, but who we are as people and like what we enjoy and what we want to do. And so, yeah, like I think having outside perspective and benchmarking is helpful, that at the end of the day, like having someone who understands you, is day to day with you in your business, and you can talk to like bounce ideas off of, has been really valuable for our business.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the sessions that I have are like soundboarding sessions, to be honest. It's like, oh, this is like what I'm thinking of doing next. We have our MVP, but, I'm kind of trying to figure out what do I do next, or what are some of the key things I should be doing next, right? So I think we are in our own heads, and it's hard to get that clarity unless you can bounce it off someone. And sometimes it's just the other person asking you a certain question and you go, oh yeah, okay, now I kind of have a vision, right? So it's great that you guys have each other, but it sounds like also outside of talking to each other, you have other people that kind of bring out some of these things. So I know this question can be too far ahead, but if you were to kind of look ahead to maybe 3 to 5 years, right, for your company, what are some things you hope happen for your company?
I always want to have a product that we sell, not just services. I hope that in 3 to 5 years, we figure out what that product is and have made good progress on it. I also hope that we will have an amazing team working with us. Now we have a small team of 3 people working with us. I would love for that team to grow a little bit bigger. And I came to realize that I really enjoy working with a team.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think Anya and I have talked about the vision for the agency specifically is to have it a little bit more self-sustaining, and not have us in the day-to-day so much, so that it becomes a revenue stream for us that allows us to go explore these other products and startup ideas. So I would agree.
Amazing. And I hope all of those things happen and we can reconnect in a few years and we'll talk about the next stuff, right? And one other question I was kind of thinking of for our conversation today is, this question of like AI and design, right? How do you see that interplay? Because now there's also a lot of tools coming out, for design, but also just AI kind of accelerating kind of the app building process, right? Product building process. How are you guys kind of seeing that with your clients, and what do you think is kind of coming up that we should maybe be thinking about?
I think there's like two ways to think about that question. So there's designing for AI products, and then there's using AI in design. For the using AI in design, I think that it will become sort of like a co-pilot for you to take some of the more tedious things off your plate. I think people have these like grandiose, like fear-mongering things of like, oh, like design is dead, development is dead, AI is taking over. I built this whole product or whatever with AI, like that's it in like 2 hours and things. And it's just frankly not true at this point. I think the prototyping tools have a long way to go in terms of getting to a place where you could even use it to hand off work to development, hand off design work to development. But not to say that they won't get there. I think they will. I think they will still need somebody to like kind of harness it and understand the nuances of the product and the business that you're working on, manage stakeholders and go back and forth with feedback. Understand like the users and how this fits into the context of that. You still kind of need somebody to think more strategy. Maybe some of the execution work gets taken off your plate, but if you're still, the core fundamentals of design, you're still going to need those. In terms of designing for AI products, I think that there is a lot of opportunity to kind of push the envelope on these design patterns that for a long time now we've taken as a given. There's like these patterns over time that we use because they're familiar. But AI has created a lot of different paradigms. It's a little bit more unpredictable. It allows for more personalization. So there are these new ideas that you can get really innovative with in design. And you don't kind of have to take like what's already out there, what's existing. You can like be a pioneer for new patterns moving forward. So there's a lot of creativity in terms of designing AI products, as well as just like remembering that you're designing for humans at the end of the day, and humans have human emotions and feelings and behaviors, and they want to feel like they can trust it, the products that they're using, and that they're good products, intuitive, easy to use. So there's always, again, those fundamentals that are never going to change.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you. I just had that question kind of in the back of my head. So I was like, I just want to ask it before we're done. And so, yeah, no, I think, is there anything else that you would like to cover that perhaps we didn't get to, that you would like to share about your journey, about your company, or anything else that we may not have touched on?
I think maybe one thing that I could think of is currently something that we're trying to work through as we grow, is how do we market ourselves more as a company than as two individuals? Because now we have a team of designers and they're really great. However, previously in our marketing, it's always about us, the two of us, because it was just the two of us. Now we're trying to make Koi Studios a brand that's bigger than us. And I think we're going through this growth period where we are trying to become this new version of the company.
No, I think this is part of the growing pains of a company, right? Where all the attention's on the founders, and then now you're like, okay, this is not just about me and what I'm building, but also everybody else we're kind of bringing along with us. So I'm sure you guys will kind of brainstorm and figure out like, okay, how do we kind of start taking it more towards like, this is the brand, this is the studio, and we are the leaders of it, but we have a whole team that's with us. Yeah, that's so exciting though. I can't wait to kind of come back to this conversation one day and just hear how everything has evolved. Thank you both for taking the time to speak with me and sharing your story. I'm very excited for what's ahead.
Ooh, thank you so much. Thank you for your time too.
It was fun. Thank you for joining us on the Little Pursuits podcast. Please follow, subscribe, and share this with one builder who needs it. Check out the show notes for links to connect with us and our guests.